If you love Name Explain, then please consider leaving a super thanks in the comments of this video. It's a great way to make a one-time donation to the channel and help support Name Explain.
Weddings are weird things steeped in archaic traditions. Like most weird and archaic things, weddings have their own lexicon of words, only really used in regards to the ceremonies and marriages that are formed from them. From words used to describe the events surrounding weddings, to the titles used for participants at the event, to the types of flowers used during weddings. While a lot of these terms are used pretty regularly these days, if we take a step back and actually look at some of them, you may notice that they are pretty odd. Like, what exactly is rehearsed during a rehearsal dinner? What has a page boy really got to do with pages? And why is the trip you take after your wedding named after the produce of bees and the big old lump of cheese in a night sky? Suffice to say, we really need to look into the origin of these weird wedding words. I guess a great place to start is with the word of wedding itself. Wedding is simply the noun form of the verb wed, so we ought to look into that verb instead. Wed is seemingly a pretty archaic word. Evidently, for most of human history, people have been binding their lives together in a ceremony of sorts. It seems to have tumbled through a variety of older languages before being wed in English. Its earliest roots are in the Proto-Indo-European word wad, meaning to pledge, which makes sense as a wedding is a pledge of sorts. A marriage is the product of a wedding. While the two terms are interlinked, they are different things. A wedding is an event, while a marriage is a specific kind of relationship between people, which comes from that event. Like wedding, marriage comes from the verb of marry, and also like wed, marry too comes from obscure ancient roots. There are also many different kinds of weddings. While we have the traditional wedding, which is dubbed a white wedding, in reference to the traditional colours of the bridal dress, we also have things like a destination wedding, named after the fact that most people travel to a specific place for the wedding, as opposed to it being held locally. People also have micro weddings, which refer to the fact they are smaller in scale. There's even group weddings where many people get married at the same time. Most of these other kinds of weddings have pretty obvious names, however. One of the more unique wedding style names, however, is elopement, also known as eloping. This is when just the people getting married go somewhere private without the knowledge of anyone else to get married. Elope seemingly didn't always relate to just weddings, it would seem. It comes from the old Dutch word of ontlopen, meaning to run away in general, and then over time it got linked with marriage. The word is also tied to the word of leap too, which makes sense as leaping off is kind of like running away as well. Though perhaps one of the more infamous kinds of weddings out there has to be the shotgun wedding. A shotgun wedding is a wedding between two people taking place due to the fact that they might have a child on the way. It's something I'm not too sure happens as much anymore, but I must admit, even if they do, I doubt they're referred to as shotgun weddings, but it's a term many people know about. The reason they are called shotgun weddings is because on occasion, the men in these weddings were held at gunpoint to get married to the woman they had gotten pregnant. More often than not, that gun was held by the father of the bride. Like I said, it's all a bit archaic, and I'm not too sure if anyone has been held at gunpoint for marriage in recent times. Events relating to weddings start happening before the wedding itself. Of course, there's the initial proposal, and that word is simply, once again, a noun form of the verb propose. One of the other things that happens before a wedding, however, are nights to celebrate each person getting married. In American English, these are called bachelor and bachelorette nights for men and women respectively. These tend to be days/nights full of activities and alcohol. The names of these nights simply come from the terms of bachelor and bachelorette. These come from French and simply mean unmarried man and woman, with bachelor dating back to the age of knights in the Middle Ages, whereas bachelorette is a more recent creation of the 19th century. Here in the UK and other English-speaking parts of the world, they have different names, however. They are known as stag nights and hen nights for men and women respectively. It might seem strange at first to name these parties after female chickens and male deer specifically, but when we look into the origin of these words, it starts to make a tad more sense. In Middle English, hen could be used to refer to any female bird, and in some cases, the female of any species. And likewise, stag could be used to refer to the male of any species. These names related to the fact that traditionally, these nights were very gender/sex specific, with people of each gender going to one or the other with little mixing. There is also the rehearsal dinner, which is closer to the wedding itself. This isn't actually a rehearsal of a dinner you will have at the wedding, but it's more a dinner to celebrate the rehearsal of the wedding. Calling it a wedding rehearsal dinner makes a tad more sense. We then also have the titles people take on during a wedding. The most notable of these are bride and groom. Bride being used for the women getting married and groom for the men getting married traditionally. Like with words such as wedding and marriage, these are two pretty old words. Bride comes from unknown Germanic roots but relates to old words like the Old High German Blut and the Old Frisian Breed. Groom is a tad more interesting, it would seem. Groom in regards to weddings is a shortening of bridegroom, which is a compound of the words bride and groom, with groom believed to mean just man, coming from the Old English guma, meaning man. So bridegroom means something like brideman, and was shortened to just mean man, which it already meant anyway. A little weird to say the least. From these terms we also get terms like bridesmaid and groomsman, relating to the people getting married. Often at weddings, children are given specific roles, the most noticeable of those being flower girls and page boys, though the genders can be reversed or ignored altogether. Flower girl is pretty easy to understand. They throw flower petals down the aisle, hence the name. Page boys traditionally held the dress of the bride, but sometimes they just walk down the aisle with the flower girl. But why that name? It relates once again to the Middle Ages and the Age of Knights. In these times, a page was the title for a young boy or servant. As pages tend to be young boys at weddings, this title makes sense. It's pretty archaic, I know, but most things at weddings are. Another unusually named title we use for people at weddings is usher. These are the people who show other guests to their seats and tend to wait by the doors. Usher is actually a corruption of the Latin osterius, meaning doorkeeper. What's interesting with this one is that usher is also a verb now, meaning to guide someone somewhere. Unlike previous examples, however, where the verb made the noun, in this case, the noun formed the verb. Something that is a mainstay at weddings are flowers. Like, there are so many different kinds of flowers used at weddings, and many of these different flower presentations have their own names. Most noticeably, we have the bouquet, which is a term for a collection of flowers in general and not just linked to weddings. At a wedding, the bouquet are the flowers that are traditionally held by the bride and then thrown out to the crowd. Bouquet is a distinctly French word and translates roughly into meaning little wood. I imagine this is due to the fact that the collection of flowers that make up a bouquet do indeed look like a small woodland unto themselves. Another kind of bunch of flowers often seen at a wedding is called a nosegay. These are bunches of flowers that are usually made up of flowers with a much stronger smell. This is a pretty old word and relates to the older meaning of the word gay, meaning things like joyful and happy. This is because the smells of these flowers would make your nose happy and joyful. We then have the flowers that the people getting married wear on themselves. Brides traditionally wear flowers around their wrist called a corsage, whereas grooms tend to have flowers on their lapel which called boutonnières. Corsage seems to be the French word for the bodice, which is the name for the upper part of a dress. This is because these flowers were initially worn on the top part of the dress before shifting to the wrist. Their full name was also once bouquet de corsage, which means bouquet of the bodice. Boutonnière, on the other hand, comes from the French word for button. This is because these flowers were worn through the buttonhole of a lapel. And then we have the events that come after the wedding day, most noticeably the honeymoon. Honeymoon refers to the period of happiness that follows a wedding, which in modern times too usually includes some kind of fancy holiday or time away. Honeymoon is a word from pretty interesting origins. It seems to have two meanings. The honey relates to the sweetness of this time period, like how honey itself is sweet, whereas the moon part relates to the fact that this happy period seemingly lasts around a month. Of course, months and moons are very closely related to one another, though there is apparently also an old tradition in which newly married couples would receive a month's supply of mead when they got married. And as mead is made using honey, it may relate to that too. That's all very sweet to say the least. Pun intended, I suppose. The final word I want to cover relates to marriage in a weird way. It's kind of the polar opposite of marriage, that being divorce. While it is seen as sad for a marriage to end in divorce, I think there's something great about having it as an option. I would rather people divorce than be stuck with someone they aren't happy with all their life. Divorce simply comes from the Latin divortium, meaning separation, and gave us the word of divert too. So, whether you be looking forward to an upcoming wedding, in your honeymoon period, happily married for many years, starting life with a fresh outlook thanks to a divorce, or think marriages as a whole are a big money making scam, hopefully you have a better understanding where all those weird wedding words come from. This video topic was suggested by New Wave Nancy over on my Patreon. Every Wednesday I put up a video request post over on my Patreon for my awesome patrons to leave video ideas on. I then pick one of those ideas to be turned into a video the following Wednesday. So if you have a great idea for a Name Explain video and wish to enjoy Name Explain videos ad-free as well as get exclusive content and your name at the end of these videos, then why not support the channel on Patreon? It takes just $1 a month to help the channel in a huge way and gets you all of these amazing benefits. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and once again, thank you all so much.